let's go IVF.
Okay.
So if you would ask me a few years ago about the IVF, I would say that's a great idea. One of the options if you can have babies, right? But as more as I read, as more as I dive into it, that's not as good as it can see in the first place, right? What's wrong with the IVF?
America is not ready for this conversation.
They are.
Church is not ready for this conversation. We have zero conception of bioethics. We have zero understanding of how to apply morality to the human nature. Zero.
What do you mean? Unpack.
What I mean by that is we've been inculcated and discipled in violence in the womb for the last 50 years. It's the air we breathe. It's the onslaught of propaganda that we receive every single day, bombarding us like a hurricane through our digital media, through every every media platform, entertainment, every area of digital advertising. It's always how unborn children are really just clumps of cells, how they're not really human beings, how it's just dehumanizing, like Hitler's
with the Jews?
Youth, right? Hitler's youth raised in a whole milieu that told them that they were the Aryan race and that everyone else was subhuman. This is the air that we breathe, is that human beings in the womb don't have value, and that personhood is something that we can arbitrarily pick and choose, that human nature isn't what gives us rights and dignity and value. And so when it comes to what's in the womb, we have dehumanized children. So the question about an embryo, it's like, it's not even a thought for most Christians as the value of an embryo, but they're nonetheless human. So when I say that we're not ready for this conversation, is we're in spiritual and moral infancy in our understanding of moral intuition. And so, when a human being in the third trimester can be legally killed and sanctioned in many states in the U.S., when this next election will most likely be decided on whether or not we can kill our human beings in the womb. We're not ready to have a conversation to really understand the gravity and nature of the value of a human embryo, because we've devalued it in the hearts and minds of the collective conscious for 50 years. With that being said, right, it's just a matter of logical consistency. If a human being is valuable such that no one can take its life, why do not all human beings have value? So there's two questions. One is, what's in the womb from conception human, and is it alive? That's the only questions that matter, right? So if it's living and if it's a human being,
from day one,
from the time that it starts to become so, we should give equal dignity such that we can't intentionally kill them. But the reason why we can't seem to have an accurate understanding of this question of IVF is because we don't even know basic 101 of bioethics or moral understandings of the dignity of the human nature.
So I believe people are just uninformed, just like I was just a few years ago. IVF is good for the parents, for the future parents, for the couple that can get pregnant. That's it. But what was the process? How is it all being made? I didn't care at all. And I believe most of the people don't care at all. They just want to get pregnant.
Well, and what I mean by this is like, okay, a human being as a toddler is still in an early stage of development, right? It can't even walk yet. It can't talk. It can't express its ideas. It's barely conscious. It barely has its own concept of identity over time, right? Several months outside of the womb, babies still aren't conscious. That's why there's a guy named Peter Singer, who's actually the bioethicist, chief a guy at bioethics at Princeton University, is what I understand. He actually takes this idea of personhood and is egregiously immoral, but actually consistent. And he says, what gives you personhood is your ability to be conscious. Well, your consciousness gives you, if your consciousness gives you personhood, the problem is babies aren't fully conscious until about 3 months outside of the womb. And so, which is why he thinks that you can kill a baby up to the level of consciousness, even 3 months outside of the womb.
He really thinks so?
Well, but we say it's crazy, but is it any less crazy that we do it 3 months earlier? That's the question, right? Like a baby can live outside of the womb at 21 weeks. 40 weeks is fully ready to, 40 weeks is 36 to 40 weeks is when babies are born, right? Fully formed and outside.
You saw my son, Richard.
Yeah.
So he's 5.5 now. So he was born at 36 weeks.
There
only.
you go. There you go.
But they kill those babies. They can kill those babies.
Yeah, you can kill a baby to the day of birth in America. And if you don't believe me, just literally type up. You can go to Colorado. There's an abortionist named Warren Hearn, Dr. Warren Hearn. Google Warren Hearn, abortion, Colorado. He's in Denver, Colorado. And write openly on their website, first, second, third trimester abortions. They advertise openly on their website. If you don't believe me, look up the DuPont Clinic in Washington, D.C. Look up Cesare Santangelo's Washington Surgery Center, where the babies that we had found outside of the Washington Surgery Center there. Look up Justice4TheFive, the third trimester babies that I held in my arms that were found outside of that clinic.
Let's get back to the IVF.
Yeah. So
explain to people why it's so bad.
So
maybe you should explain the process.
So I'll get to the process, but the basic principle of the matter is, if it's bad to kill a human being as a toddler, but not because it's less developed, then why at third trimester? Why at second trimester? Why at first trimester? And to the purpose of our conversation, why it's when it's in the embryonic stages, right? So embryo, fetus, infant, toddler, the teenager, human, geriatric, these are just stages of human development.
Yes.
They're all equally and whole human beings from the moment that human being starts to grow. So the question why IVF is as equally wrong, though not as gruesome, as other forms of dehumanization of what's in the womb, is because only 7% of children or embryos or human beings that are created through IVF are ever born. 7%. So, 93% of the babies created, the human beings created in IVF, are either discarded and thrown down, flushed down a drain or a toilet, or are indefinitely frozen on ice. There's over, I think the estimates are between 1 and 4 million embryos right now on ice. And so if I was to tell, and here's the tricky part of this is, most people are hearing this, and everybody, nearly everybody, goes into IVF with the best of intentions, incredible intentions. I mean, my wife we've been married for 8 years. For the second we got married, we have not been able to conceive, right? It's one of the hardest things that we've ever had to deal with, right? I mean, I could cry just thinking of the fact that I'll probably never be a father, right? We're fostering now, but and we've been able to experience a little bit of joy, but I understand how hard it is. And so there's a lot of sympathy and compassion that goes into this conversation. But I'm sorry, but if someone approached me and said, I can give you a child, but you'll have to kill 93% of the children that are made in order to have that baby. Would you do it? I would say no. I'm not sacrificing 93% of my
let's put
children.
Let's put
in order
it
to,
not this way. So not
right?
not 93%, but if you want to have a child, 9 of them prior to
Yeah.
that have
Yeah.
to be killed.
Yeah, exactly. So
9 out of 10.
So let me
90%.
phrase it that way. So if someone approached me and said, I'll give you a child, but 1 out of your 10 babies, 9 of your babies are going to be either flushed down the drain to meet American sewers or are never going to come into this world. Would you do that? Would you take that? I would say absolutely not. But for some reason, Americans, Christians, conservatives are okay with sacrificing 90% of the children in order to have that one. And it's completely inconsistent.
I believe they just don't think about it at all. Like IVF and IVF, that's it. An embryo, and I'm gonna have my kid. Yes. What's the price? Dollar-wise, they pay the price.
Yeah.
That's it. They
Yeah.
don't even think about. Maybe even if they think about it right now, for instance, when they're listening, so the embryos are what, like this? It's nothing. If you
Yeah.
if I can flush it to
What,
the toilet,
your
it's
child
nothing.
is, your baby is this? What's this?
Yeah, but it's just
So
a
it's
matter
like
of time.
it's arbitrary, right? So it's like so the fundamental presupposition there is if it's small, it's less valuable. So this is the Lincoln Douglas debates that occurred during slavery. And I'll maybe botch the quote, but in the debates, Lincoln said, if it's skin color that gives you your value, be careful, because by that metric, you'll be enslaved to the first person you meet with a skin color fairer than your own. And then he says, so it's IQ then. But be careful, because if it's IQ, you can be a slave to the first person you meet with an IQ higher than your own. And for our conversation, so it's size then.
It's size then.
So be careful, because you'll be enslaved by the first person, mightier and stronger or larger than you are.
Let's go to the process of the IVF. How does it look like? What is that?
So what happens is they take sperm and egg, and they fertilize an egg, a human egg, and then once the sperm dies, the egg dies, and a new embryo emerges, and then so they'll typically do anywhere from 5 to 15 embryos at a time. Depending on a whole host of factors, right? And then they sort through those embryos, and then they choose the ones that are best. If there's any chromosomal abnormalities,
They do it outside the womb?
no, in a microscope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they examine these embryos, and then they can see the rapid growth of these embryos, and they just have scientific testing on which embryos they do genetic testing on them. You can determine everything from gender to, it's encoded from the very DNA, from the very moment of conception. Mm-hmm. Everything that is determined already, from your skin color to your eye color to your gender, everything is encoded in the DNA.
And they can read it.
Yes. So, and there's gene editing and stuff. I don't know all the aspects of that because that's beyond my purview, but I do know that several friends of mine, unfortunately, have gone through because they had 2 girls and they wanted a boy so bad. They went through, I don't even know how many embryos, just throwing away embryos until they could get a boy. Oh yeah, dude. Oh, absolutely.
So they can get a baby.
These are Christian families, brother. Christian families.
Let me get this straight. So
in Reformed Christian circles.
They couldn't get pregnant. They go to the IVF.
No, they had 2 girls, but they wanted a boy, a rich Asian family. And so I don't know how many, but
they didn't want to get just a regular sex just to get pregnant regularly, normally, because they can't. They just wanted a boy.
They wanted a boy.
That's so twisted.
So you're spending tens of thousands and thousands of dollars to get that boy, to implement that boy, and you're throwing away daughter
That's
after daughter,
crazy.
flushing away daughter after daughter after daughter.
That's demonic.
Well, and when it's just, I mean, it's all demonic. Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's eugenics is what it is. You're selectively.
Bro, but there's gradation. Okay, that's bad, but when you even can get pregnant, but now you can, and you don't like the gender, and second, third, fourth, fifth time you don't like the gender and still flush it to the toilet.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. But even in that conversation, I get it. It's more bad because of your intention is also bad.
Mm.
But even if my intentions are good, my intention doesn't justify throwing my offspring down the toilet, or flushing them down a drain. And so when I say Christians and, when I say even moral religious people, or when I say, the GOP isn't ready for this conversation, it's a reflection of the moral bankruptcy that we are at as a society.
But do you think they acknowledge this whole process, that they kill the babies, those?
No, because
they just don't acknowledge. They don't understand.
Well, I mean, you've dehumanized them from day one. If your presupposition are these aren't human beings, and actually, it's funny because they changed the definition in the medical literature for when human life begins. So originally, conception was defined to mean fertilization, the moment that a new embryo explodes into existence, right?
Light.
Yes, exactly. Well, and you can see that there's ions that fire off, which is really, really cool. There's this flash of light when a new human being which is, I mean, talk about like the Bible, like thousands of years before even microscopy or anything could be understood. Let there be light is the first thing that God says when he makes all of existence. And that same flash of light, let there be light, when a new human being is created. But yeah, it's just a wild.
So they changed the description.
Oh yeah, sorry. Conception. Yeah, thank you for keeping me on track. Conception used to mean that moment, but then they changed the word conception to mean implantation. And one of the reasons why they did was because they wanted to really lay the groundwork in the collective kind of understanding for the pushing of birth control, right? Because some birth controls kill an embryo that hasn't implanted yet. And so they changed the definition of conception to mean implantation so that people didn't feel bad about being on hormonal birth control. That's a whole nother conversation. But so fertilization now means that moment of a human's being's existence, and conception in the medical literature is implantation. So most doctors will say life begins at implantation, not conceptions. And this is even repeated by pastors that I know.
So you take the sperm, you take the egg, you fertilize it. You take how many eggs? You fertilize it, you said 10?
Yeah, I mean, it's changed over time, but anywhere from 5 to 10 to as much as like maybe 15 and are frozen. Those other embryos are then are frozen and stored for a later date. And you can pull from those. And then, so they create the embryos. They selectively get rid of or reduce the ones that have any chromosomal abnormalities at all. They throw those and discard them.
Immediately or after some days?
Depends. It depends on there are some fertility doctors that will implant those. Very rare. Most will not. I know when before we were even in the in the pro-life world or knew anything about IVF, we actually went to a consultation for IVF, and they said that they will not, at UCLA I know, will not implant any embryos that have any genetic abnormalities or anything wrong with them. But so then after those are discarded, then they take the good embryos, implant the best ones, and then leave the rest for future use, or they're either frozen indefinitely or discarded.
Frozen. So if size matters, right, which it does, so you basically freeze a human being that is very, very small.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they can stay there for decades.
For hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years. So there was, there's been embryos that are 30 years old that are born. So imagine being almost 31 when the day that you're born.
So they did fertilization. They froze the
embryo.
embryo.
In the 90s, they froze these babies.
They waited for 30 years. Then they implanted, and the woman gave birth.
Yeah. And this has created a huge, massive market for
Frozen the
LGBT couples.
Why?
Well, because they can't conceive, right? You need a man and a woman in order to make a baby. And so...
you mean by the IVF? I was thinking about the freezing the embryos.
Yeah, so they will get a surrogate woman to carry the baby if it's a male couple, or they'll get a sperm donor if it's a female couple, and they will take one of their eggs, fertilize it, implant it in the lesbian couple, and they'll have a baby that way. Or gay couples will have an egg donor, and I don't know if it's a Russian roulette or whatever they do. Just I don't know if they play Rochambeau of whose sperm gets to fertilize this child, but
how freaking twisted it is.
Crazy. Well,
who's the father?
So yeah, exactly. I mean, this is how sick and demented this industry has become. And could it be redeemed? Maybe. Can you I mean, so the question is now, can you implant one at a time? Is that okay? Yeah. But it's like you have a whole industry that kills 90% of the human beings it creates.
93 to be specific.
Yeah.
So you take a couple, a woman and a man, right?
Yeah.
They can get pregnant. So they take man's sperm and her egg, and they fertilize it.
Yes.
But why can't they fertilize in a lab, but they can get pregnant naturally by having sex?
Yeah, so there's a whole host of issues. Like for me, I had cancer when I was 17 and had a lot of chemotherapy. So I have sperm, but it's not, the swimmers aren't swimming too well, the motility. Mm-hmm. So the sperm needs to get up through the fallopian tube up to where it can be, where the egg resides, and it needs to
go through.
Yeah, be fertilized, right? So the sperm has to swim up there to where, and then the embryo comes down and implants itself into the uterine wall. So for me, it's a matter of utility. Some men have low sperm counts. Some women have things like PCOS. There's a whole host of issues that can arise why fertility rates, and there's other environmental factors for that.
But through IVF, you could have a kid.
Yes.
They take a lot of sperm. What do they do?
So you basically not to be graphic here, but you masturbate into a cup, and then that sperm is frozen until they can thaw it out and do a
they just repeat the process.
Yeah, exactly.
You just can't have so much sex, but you can have this process repeated. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. So then they'll go up into the woman, take an egg, take some eggs out, and then fertilize those eggs, and then they implant it back into the woman's.
But there are times when, for instance, if a man is fertile but the woman is not fertile, so they take a man's sperm and another woman's egg. Mm-hmm. And then they implant it to a woman, to a couple's.
Yeah, or so another thing that's very common is just this whole thing of surrogacy. So this is the other crazy thing. Follow. So rich, entitled women who don't want to go through the process of labor, that don't want to become pregnant, they rent a womb for their child. So they will pay a fertility doctor to create, they'll take their embryos and take his sperm, They'll create these embryos, or take her eggs and his sperm, create embryos, and then they'll pay a surrogate to implant those into her cervix.
Excuse me, cervix. Front hole.
Yeah, into her uterus, and then she will carry the child to term, and they'll pay her something like $30,000, to do so. They rent a womb. Yeah.
So it's going for a few decades now?
So, dude, this is even crazier. So one woman called our organization, called me actually, and said, AJ, hey, I've been following you online. I love your work. I have a problem though. I agreed to become a surrogate for a gay couple. But the problem was this couple found out I'm 6 months pregnant. And this couple that paid me to carry their baby found out that the baby has club feet.
What is that?
It's just basically the feet are misshapen. Mm-hmm. It's something that's totally correctable, but they found out the baby has club feet, and they wanted her to abort the baby. So. What do I do? So she's like, what do I do? Can you help me? And we told her, you can't abort that baby. Like, no. She's like, I don't want to abort this baby. I it's totally against everything I do. But the question is, right?
Fucking so now, it's not her baby.
Think about this. The abortion industry, what do they always say? My body, my choice?
Yes.
Except when you implant your DNA into someone and you want that baby dead, right? It's not her body, her choice anymore. So many women have been forced to abort. Thankfully, we got a lawyer and we're able to get enough pressure on this couple to back off, and the baby was born.
That was her egg?
No. She was just a random woman who was implanted.
So she gave a birth to not her child at all.
Yeah.
Zero genetics, zero hers DNA.
Yeah. This is surrogacy. This is modern surrogacy. So rich couples, celebrity couples.
And she raises
They
the
don't
child.
want to put their body through all of that. They don't want their, vaginas to be messed up. These are the entitled. I mean, this is why people do this, really. Like these disgusting feminist, celebrity, like pregnancy and babies are icky. Pregnancy is disgusting. Motherhood. This is the perspective.
How do they know if they have never
right?
gave birth?
They want to keep a tight cervix, or not cervix, but a tight, vagina.
At the same time, they're promiscuous as hell.
Yeah.
So she's raising the baby.
Yeah. So no. She handed the baby back.
Oh, she handed
it. She just got paid to have the baby.
But they wanted to get it aborted.
Yeah.
But they still want to raise the baby.
Yeah. So they just had to deal with the baby with club feet instead of killing. Could you imagine being that child?
Yes, and they listened to this podcast 10 years later.
My parents. Oh wow, my parents found out they figured out something was wrong with my feet. And at a viable time, I was 21 weeks on. I was viable, 6 months in the womb. And they wanted me dead, but because they couldn't kill me legally, I'm here. And suddenly I'm loved and valued now.
Do you think there is a special place in hell for those kind of people?
Man, I think our entire world is just completely morally in just a really bad shape, man.